A real Rathalos would not fight you. It would simply pick the wrong updraft on a Tuesday morning and starve to death 3 valleys over. No fire, no roar, no boss music, just a 3-ton miscalculation falling out of the sky. That's the part the games never tell you. Because everyone wants to ask the fun question. How dangerous would a real wyvern be? How fast? How hot? Could it take a tank? But the real question, the one biology actually asks, is meaner. It's not can it kill you, it's can it survive Tuesday? And the answer to that one is where things start to get genuinely strange. So let's do this properly. Let's take Rathalos out of the game world, drop it into ours, build it from the bones up, with every gram of its body answerable to real science. Real wing loading, real combustion chemistry, real ecology, no hand-waving, no fudging the inconvenient parts. I'm even going to give it a name, because a creature this serious deserves one. Pyronyx regalis, from the Greek for fire and claw, plus the Latin for royal. From here on, when I say Pyronyx, I mean the real one. The game version stays in the game. And we're going to score Pyronyx regalis across 4 categories: habitat, diet, competition, reproduction, each rated out of 10 on a biological plausibility scale. Stick around to the end, because once we have the verdict, we're running the simulation forward 10 million years of evolution to see what kind of wyvern would actually walk out the other side. One of those 3 branches gets significantly more terrifying than anything in the games. Let's start with the ground beneath its feet. A 3-ton flying animal cannot just jump into the air. It can't. The physics don't allow it. You're not getting a Rathalos sprinting across a meadow and lifting off like a startled pheasant. You're getting an animal that has to drop off a cliff and convert altitude into airspeed. That's not a stylistic choice. That's a hard constraint. And it dictates everything about where Pyronyx can live. The largest flying animal we have ever found in the fossil record is Quetzalcoatlus northropi, wingspan around 10 to 12 meters. Weight, maybe 250 kilograms on a generous day. Already considered by most paleontologists to be a soarer rather than a flapper. Already pushing the absolute outer edge of what powered flight permits on this planet. Rathalos is roughly 15 times heavier than that. So, Pyronyx regalis is not flapping its way across the sky. It can't. Its wings would need to span 14 to 16 meters, narrow, tapered, built for high-altitude glide. And it would need a constant supply of rising air just to stay up. Take the updrafts away, and you take Rathalos out of the sky like switching off a light, which means a real Pyronyx would be locked into 3 very specific kinds of terrain. Volcanic highlands, where heated rock faces throw up reliable thermal columns. Think the East African Rift, where dormant calderas pump warm air skyward like invisible elevators. High alpine ranges above about 2,500 meters, the Andes, the Rockies, the Caucasus, anywhere cliffs and prey overlap. And coastal cliff country, where ocean winds slam into vertical rock and ride upward forever. The wandering albatross uses that trick to fly thousands of kilometers without flapping. A wyvern could do a smaller version of the same. But here's the trap nobody talks about. A creature that runs internal combustion chemistry doesn't just need to fly, it needs to dump heat. Enormous amounts of it, which means cold, dry, thin air. And rules out the tropics, rules out swamps, rules out roughly every place humans actually want to live. Run the overlap. Updrafts, cool air, prey density, cliff geometry. The map shrinks fast. We're looking at maybe 5 to 8% of Earth's land surface where Pyronyx regalis could even pretend to be a resident species. Habitable? Yes. Common? Absolutely not. Habitat score 6 out of 10. It can live here. It just can't live in very many places. Now let's feed it. A 3-ton apex flyer is a calorie volcano. Run the metabolic scaling, the same equations that work for albatrosses, condors, every large soaring bird we've ever wired up to a sensor. A continuously active Pyronyx needs somewhere between 30 and 50 kilograms of dense protein and fat per day. Every day. On a hard hunting day, on a fire-breathing day, that spikes to 80. To put that in scale, A fully grown golden eagle eats about 250 grams a day. Pyronix regalis eats 200 eagles worth daily. So where do those calories come from on a real Earth? 3 prey categories: scale and only 3. Large ungulates, elk, ibex, mountain goats, deer, in the 50 to 400 kilogram range, clustered conveniently in the same alpine zones Pyronix would prefer. A single adult elk feeds Rathalos for 3 days. Then marine prey seals, sea lions, the occasional unwise dolphin snatched from coastal hunting grounds, the way a Steller's sea eagle takes a salmon, except scaled up by a factor of 50. And the third option, the one that ends everything: livestock, cattle, sheep. The moment Pyronix discovers a pasture, the clock starts ticking on a much bigger conflict. But there's a hidden cost almost everyone misses. The fire is not free. Whatever chemistry Pyronix uses to breathe flame, and the closest real-world analog we have is the bombardier beetle, which mixes hydroquinones and hydrogen peroxide in a reaction chamber to spray boiling defensive jets at 100 degrees Celsius. That chemistry burns its own fuel. Scale beetle chemistry up by a factor of millions, and you're talking about a reaction chamber holding liters of pressurized chemical precursor, plus dedicated lipid reserves that take hours, maybe days, to regenerate. The fire tank has to be refilled from the same diet that's already paying for the flying. So a real Rathalos has to eat significantly more than an equivalent non-fire-breathing predator just to stay topped off. The food is there. It's just hard to reach. And the flight bill is brutal. Diet scores 7 out of 10. The calories exist. Getting to them is the problem. Now, here's where the story turns, because most people, when they imagine a real Rathalos, picture it as unstoppable, apex of apexes, king of the food chain, and that is not what biology says at all. The truth is, Pyronix regalis would walk into a competitive arena that is already full. Earth's apex tier isn't an empty throne waiting for a wyvern. It's crowded, and the residents are very, very good at what they do. In the mountains, Pyronix would be fighting for prey against brown bears, mountain lions, and wolf packs. None of them fly. None of them have to. A wolf pack can drop an elk in minutes. A brown bear can claim a carcass and dare anything alive to take it back. And here's the punchline. None of those predators burn 30,000 kilocalories a day just to stay airborne. The energy math in a long, sustained competition for the same prey base favors the ground predator, not the flyer. On the coasts, it gets worse. Pyronix shows up at a seal colony and has to share the buffet with orcas. And orcas. Orcas don't lose. They're documented to hunt and kill juvenile great white sharks for sport. A wyvern landing at the waterline to grab a pinniped is, from an orcapod's perspective, an interesting looking shark. Pods don't dominate by size. They dominate by coordination. 5 orcas thinking together is a kind of intelligence Earth has never reproduced anywhere else. And Pyronix would be one bad afternoon away from learning that lesson personally. What about predation on Pyronix itself? An adult, fully grown, armored, fire-breathing, 3-ton wyvern with 30,000 newtons of bite force. Yeah, nothing engages that voluntarily. Not in a fair fight. But juveniles. Juveniles are a different story. And this is the part most fans never want to consider. Subadult Rathalos hatchlings would face the entire mesopredator lineup Earth has spent millions of years perfecting. Eagles, bears, large reptiles, wolves, feral pigs raiding nest sites. The fire-breathing chemistry almost certainly takes years to develop, the way venom systems mature slowly in some real snake species. So juvenile Pyronix are large, slow-growing, undefended, and delicious. Earth's mesopredators have spent eons learning exactly where soft tissue lives in armored prey. The bottleneck for the species isn't the adult phase. It's the first 3 years of life. And then there's us. The moment a real Pyronix regalis started taking livestock, and it would, the response would not be philosophical. Wolf reintroduction in Yellowstone, eagle conflicts in Mongolia, condor recovery in California, The pattern is identical every time. Public tolerance for an apex predator collapses the instant it eats something with an owner. And Pyronyx has the worst PR problem of any species in history, because it's a fire-breathing animal that can be seen from miles away. The competition tier isn't bears. It isn't orcas. It's a species Pyronyx never evolved to handle. Walking around at sea level with rifles, competition and predation score 5 out of 10. Adults dominate. Juveniles barely make it. And the deciding factor is the one nobody on the fossil record ever saw coming. Which brings us to reproduction. The category most people skip. The one that actually decides everything. Here's the brutal math. The bigger an animal, the slower it reproduces. The slower it reproduces, the more catastrophic a single bad year becomes. And Rathalos is very, very big. Modern reptilian apex predators, Komodo dragons, for instance, at about 70 kilograms, lay 15 to 30 eggs per clutch. Scale that down through every reptile we've studied, and a 3-ton wyvern would produce maybe 2 to 5 eggs at a time, once every 2 or 3 years. That's it. For comparison, the wandering albatross lays 1 egg every 2 years. 1. And the wandering albatross is currently considered vulnerable to extinction, despite barely any human pressure at all. Pyronyx regalis starts the game in a worse demographic position than the albatross. Then there's the egg itself. A reptile-grade egg big enough to produce a Pyronyx hatchling would be 40 to 60 centimeters long. It needs precise temperature for months, and a parent who has to leave every day to hunt 30 kilograms of food cannot also brood that egg full-time. So Pyronyx would have to evolve one of two things: either a male-female pair bond with shared incubation, the way large raptors do it, or hyper-defensible cliff nests, so secure that nothing else can get to them. And here's the thing. The Monster Hunter games depicted exactly that. Rathalos nests on cliff faces in remote alpine zones. Biologically, that's not artistic license. That's the only configuration that works. Then comes the slowest, ugliest part of the math. First-year mortality. In real wild, raptors, golden eagles in the Alps, for example, first-year mortality runs between 50 and 70%, even with intense parental care. Time to maturity for an animal this size would be 5 to 7 years. So a breeding pair, across a 30 to 40-year reproductive lifespan, needs to fledge maybe 6 to 8 juveniles total just to maintain stable population numbers. That is a knife's edge. Lose one bad decade and you don't bounce back. You go extinct. And remember, the juveniles can't breathe fire yet. Whatever protects an adult, Rathalos doesn't protect a chick. They have no chemical defense. They have only their parents and the cave wall behind them. So Pyronyx regalis would have to evolve raptor-grade family structures, fierce nest defense, prolonged parental care, possibly cooperative sibling behavior just to make the numbers close. Not impossible, but narrow. Razor-thin narrow. Reproductive success scores 6 out of 10. Now let's tally it. Habitat 6, diet 7, competition 5, reproduction 6. Final biological plausibility, 6 out of 10, which translates, in plain language, to this. A real Rathalos is not impossible, but it would be a permanently endangered species, locked into narrow habitat corridors, dependent on unstable updraft networks, competing with predators that already own the niche, and reproducing at a glacial pace with zero margin for error. Pyronyx regalis could exist. It would just always be one bad century away from being gone forever. But evolution doesn't quit at barely viable. Evolution adapts. So let's run the simulation forward. Give the lineage 10 million years. Watch it speciate. And 3 very distinct wyverns walk out of that forest. The first one is the one I'd actually want to meet. We'll call it Pyronyx socialis, the communal wyvern. This branch solved the reproductive nightmare by going social. Family clans of 6 to 12 individuals, shared nest sites in volcanic caldera networks, multiple adults feeding juveniles, multiple adults defending territory. The closest real-world analog is Harris's hawk, the only known raptor that hunts cooperatively in stable family groups, and the result is the same. First-year mortality collapses from 60% to under 20. The fire-breathing chemistry stays, but it becomes a coordinated defensive response, a clan-wide flame curtain when something threatens the nest, not a hunting weapon. Body size actually drops, down to maybe 1.5 to 2 tons, because group hunting is far more efficient than solo apex predation. This is the version of Rathalos you do not want to be real, because it would be smart, it would be social, it would be stable. And the one rule about smart, social, stable apex populations is they do not quietly disappear when humans show up. The second branch went the opposite direction. Pyrrhonyx celeritas, the razor wyvern. This lineage solved the energy crisis by shrinking down to 300-400 kilograms, still bigger than anything that flies today, but a fraction of the original. The wingspan stayed wide 9 to 10 meters, but the aspect ratio shifted, narrower, sharper, built for endurance. Think albatross geometry with predator intent. The fire breath dwindled to a defensive flash, just enough to keep competitors away. But in exchange, it gained real sustained flight. Hours of flapping, hundreds of kilometers of range per day. It could chase prey across open ocean, intercept seabird flocks mid-flight, follow migrations across continents. And here's the unsettling part. At long range, it doesn't look like a wyvern. It looks like a very big seabird, until it's already on top of you. Pyrrhonyx celeritas would quietly become the most successful branch of the entire lineage, partly because nobody ever realizes it's there. And then there's the third one, Pyrrhonyx tyrannus, the tyrant wyvern, the one I'd rather not exist. This branch went in the opposite direction from celeritas, bigger, slower, hotter, chemically nightmarish. 5 to 7 tons, gave up sustained powered flight entirely, became a ridge ambusher that drops from 1,000 meters at 300 kilometers per hour onto whatever happened to be standing in the meadow below. But the fire system is what changed everything. Pyrrhonyx tyrannus developed a multi-chamber chemical defense, a hyper-scaled bombardier beetle architecture. But instead of a single jet, it sprays aerosolized combustible compounds across 50 to 100 square meters at a time. It doesn't breathe fire to fight prey. It breathes fire to flush prey. It sets entire hillsides alight and waits at the tree line for the survivors to run out. This is the lineage that doesn't share an ecosystem for long. Pyrrhonyx tyrannus is, in a real sense, a self-extinguishing species. Every time it perfects its hunting strategy, it removes the forest that fed it. But for 10 million years, in pulses, in waves, it would be the undisputed apex of every landscape it found. 3 futures. The communal wyvern wins on demographics. The razor wyvern wins on range. The tyrant wyvern wins on raw destructive supremacy, until it loses to itself. So could a real Rathalos exist? Yes, just barely, on the edge of every margin biology will allow. But the more interesting question isn't whether the wyvern survives the ecosystem, it's whether the ecosystem survives the wyvern. Because somewhere in the fossil record of a planet we'll never visit, on a continent that's already been burned and grown back twice, the question has probably already been answered. And the silence on that hillside, the absence of birdsong, the carbonized tree line, the wide, empty sky, that silence is its own kind of king.